So let's start with your name.
My name is Shawn Benjamin.
And what year were you born?
I was born in 1971,
And how long have you lived in North Baltimore?
since 1993.
And what keeps you in North Baltimore?
The small town charm, the fact that a lot of people will say small towns, everybody knows everybody's business, but in my world it's a pretty good thing. If it was a negative factor, then I might not be here as long as I've been. So yeah, I stay here because of the small town charm.
Okay. And where did you go to school?
Well, I started out my elementary years at St. Michael's Catholic Church School, which is a private school in Findlay, Ohio. I then went to Glenwood Junior High and graduated from Findlay High School.
What kind of trends were popular in your youth?
Well, I was a child of the 80s, and whatever seems like it comes around again. So things like what you kids know as retro Rubik's Cubes, retro art video games such as Galaga and Dig Dug of the 1980s, hanging out at the local 7-Eleven with a big gulp, which would be a Polar Pop nowadays, standing around a video game machine. I remember my sister spraying tons of hairspray in her hair, and it would stick up as high as like Albert Einstein, or it was just crazy. As far as apparel and stuff like that, it was everything loud. If you looked like you were going to the beach or Hawaii with all the bright colors and things like that, that was some of the styles, although I was kind of your odd duck. So in those days, to stick out and be odd and different and identify yourself as, look at me, who am I, that didn't seem to work in the 80s. It was more of what clique did you fall into? What group did you sort of mold into? And I didn't sort of fit into one. I was round peg, square hole back in the day.
Okay. What did you do for entertainment?
Me personally, I programmed a lot of computer programs. In the 80s, that was the beginning of home computers. Before the 80s, nobody had a home computer. If you wanted to have a computer in the old days, you had to build your own. And they were not like you guys know today with tablets, smartphones, desktops, laptops, things of that nature. It was an 8-bit console that you had to program pretty much everything. Media and software was stored on floppy disks and cassette cartridges, and even tape machines where the tape had to be fed in, and then the punch cards and the tapes would dictate the zeros and ones to program the computer, and lots of errors back in the day because it was all analog.
What kind of stories were you told as a child?
Well, my grandfather and my grandmother came from Laredo, Texas on my mother's side. So the Hispanic community was full of love, hugs, high-pitched squeals of, Mexican, oh, you're so cute, would be, oh, chulo, stuff like that. But my grandfather was a disc jockey for a Mexican radio program in Findlay. And so when I was really little, I would not hear, I was too young to remember this, but he would always announce our names on the radio. He was so proud of his children, he was so proud of his grandchildren. Mexican men, especially in the grandparents' age, are proud of their heritage and proud of their family. And so my grandma would tell me stories about how they courted, how in Laredo the family was so dirt poor that she wouldn't wear shoes unless she was going to school or to church or something like that. And because the family couldn't afford shoes, she only had like one pair, and the one pair was just used for special occasions. She would run around barefoot all the time. My father's side of the family was all German, and one of the stories that was told to me about my grandparents was that my grandfather served in World War II, and he was in charge of a cleanup patrol over in Germany, which, if you study Holocaust and things like that, it was a very bad time in Germany. Lots of people were killed in very bad ways, and my grandfather was in charge of trying to get that cleaned up at the end of the war. But during that time, he met his bride, and that happened to be my grandma. She passed away about 5 years ago at the age of 92. So the stories on my grandpa's, on my German side, are a little bit more darker than my grandma's on my mother's side, which is understandable. It was tough times for all of them. Both families grew up pretty poor, but it seems like there was a lot of love amongst the families. So, that was pretty common back then. The core people, mom, dad, and children always stuck together quite a bit. It had to be pretty bad for them to say, I'm done and out of here.
What is your occupation and past occupation?
Well, I started out thinking I was going to be in food service all my life. I managed Wendy's for a long time, and I managed Big Boy for a long time. But all along, I kind of had the hobby and the computer savvy to try my hand at running a computer shop. And it took 3 times. The first 2 times, it didn't work so well, and I lost big time. The 3rd time, it took off quite well, and that was back in the era where Windows 95 and Windows 98 popular. And if you've done your history lesson on computers, you'd understand that those were the first beginning of Microsoft Windows, where mice and graphics interface and things were popular. So when that took off, it allowed me to find more things to invest in because I, wanted to make sure that I was stable. So I started buying real estate, and not just nice homes. I'd buy junky homes, stuff that nobody wanted, that I would go and fix up, rent out, and then create a bunch of real estate that were rental properties for both business and residential. So that's kind of my income at this point. I since left food service and did the computer shop, and one of the business I had bought and properties had a U-Haul operation, and I ended up becoming a U-Haul dealer as well. So I'm a pretty busy character, not to mention the fact that I also run the Boy Scout troop, so a lot of stuff.
How do you run the Boy Scouts?
With a firm hand. No, I'm just saying that. Our interviewer happens to be a Boy Scout, so. It started out that I was a scout as a youth, and the simple answer is, when I was a scout, growing up in St. Michael's, I was also a poor kid. Family didn't have a whole lot of money, mom and dad had divorced, and we were kind of an outcast situation. Therefore, it's sad to say, but at St. Michael's, a lot of the kids there kind of were bullying me. And it's sad. Nowadays, they go through great lengths to make sure that kids don't get bullied, but I was treated bad both in school and in scouts. As I grew up and got older, the opportunity came around that North Baltimore was about to lose their scoutmaster, and this was in 2009. And I had inquired, and at the time the troop was only about 9 kids strong, and all of them were being forced to go to scouts. They really didn't want to be there. Well, took on the challenge. The torch was then passed to me, and for about the next 8 years, the troop started to grow. I think my take on what happened to me as a youth, I did not want that to pass on into what I believed was a proper troop. I believe that every child, no matter what kind of quirk or talent or goofy anecdote that they might have, deserves a chance to have a fun time and be successful at whatever they do. And that's how I run the Boy Scout troop. And I don't run the Boy Scout troop, the boys run the Boy Scout troop. And that's the way it should be.
So, what major historical events have you lived through?
I was alive when Elvis died. Let's see here, I was young. Some of the things that I lived through: Ronald Reagan's presidency, Jimmy Carter's presidency, Gerald Ford's presidency. I was real little at Gerald Ford, so I don't remember that too well. Some of the historical, what was the question again? Because I'm halfway through it.
Historical events that you've lived through.
Oh, okay. Well, the Berlin Wall came down. We caught Saddam Hussein, which is a little bit more modern. But, basically a lot of things that have happened are John Lennon was assassinated. That was a big one. Trying to think what else might be some major things. I'm sure there's a lot, and the ones that I caught up with were the ones that were important to my mom and dad at the time. They were big on the Beatles, so when we lost John Lennon, oh my gosh, that was tragic. When we lost Elvis, we all like rock and roll, so Elvis, that was tragic. But even just 2 years before me, so much had happened, because we lost people like Janis Joplin, and we lost people like Jimi Hendrix and stuff like that. But being a kid of the 70s, the biggest things that we got to see were the advance of technologies. We've lost a few people along the way, and we've lost so many people that were very well known in my age bracket, like John Denver, Robert Palmer, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings. And if you know any of these names I'm rattling off?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all people, and a lot of them are musicians. And I guess that goes into part two of some of the big things. You know, I was also a musician for a long time. I played in band in school, and I played drums in cover rock and roll bands all my life until just last year. So a lot of the things that you would say historical things that happened that I know of are pretty much a lot of people who died, which is sad, but yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the short answer.
What kind of inventions came out through your life?
The biggest one is the home computer. Before that, it was big offices with lots of vacuum tubes, and everything had to warm up and run. But that's the biggest thing. Touch-tone telephones. They came about in the early 70s. The home video game consoles. Flat panel television sets. Color television sets. Actually, that came out in the 50s, so let's scratch that one, because black and white and color. I'm trying to think. Fuel-injected cars. Before that, cars were carbureted. If you're wondering what the difference is,
Yeah.
fuel injection, electronics shoot the fuel into each cylinder of a car to make the car go. In the old days, there was this big barrel, and there was a pump on the side, and it would shoot raw gas right into the top of the engine. It would flow into the engine, and it would ignite from the spark plugs. Nowadays, it's a big difference. Portable camcorders, such as the one you're using now, video cameras. Polaroid photography, instant film, digital film, with digital technology where you don't have to have film anymore. We've went from film strips and movies that are on reels to digital media. Trying to think what else some of the big mild things that have happened, or inventions and such. LEDs, which is light emitting diodes, LCDs, liquid crystal displays, that allows us to have the flat panel TVs. So that's kind of some of the stuff that.
So the technology.
A lot of it's technology. You know, you had your mechanical age, you had your industrial age, now you got your technology age. Each age seemed to bring forth more evolution. I mean, before the 1900s, it was pretty rough. But it seems like from 1900 to present, things just keep getting better and better as far as technology and such. I mean, we're in a house right now that's really, really old. The detailing and stuff like that was done by craftsmen that used hand tools. Nowadays, a lot of this stuff can be milled by machine. And not just any machine. We have CNC machines that can do this by computer program. You know, in the 70s, somebody would turn the machine on, set the blades, and cut the stuff. Nowadays, you can just feed the stuff in, the machines come down and cut all the detail work by program.
How has the world changed through your life?
I think people were softer, personality-wise. When I was a kid, my dad, my grandpas, everybody said, "Oh, shake it off, be tough, you can handle it, don't cry, be a man," stuff like that. When I was going to school and people were bullying, it hurt bad. But I was told to suck it up, don't deal with it, just hold it in. And there is a little story that goes with this. About 10th grade, I thought I had enough. One of the kids was just picking and I was in an industrial arts class. Do you know what industrial arts is? It's a shop class.
Okay.
Wood, metal, stuff like that. The teacher was in the room, he was doing his thing, and I socked him hard, right in the face. The kid stepped back. His buddies were egging him on to come at me and take care of business. And he backed off. The teacher came out and says, "All right, everybody, let's get back to work." Fast forward to just 3 months ago, that teacher I spotted at Walmart. Rather, he spotted me. His name was Dave Capostaci from Finley High School. He says, "I know you." "You know me?" "Yeah, I know you. You were in my industrial arts class." I go, he goes, "Dave Capostaci." "I'm Shawn." He goes, "I know that." And I had told him that story about punching that kid. He says, "Shawn, I remember that." "Do you remember that?" "Yeah, because it only happened once." I go, "Tell me something. Why didn't you stop it?" "Because he deserved it." 2018, this teacher says he deserved it. So when I say today's kids are a little softer, I worry that this generation of people, the youngsters, might not be able to handle the pressure because we're so, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. You know what I'm talking about? You can't do this. If you can't deal with the pressure of intimidation of some sort, they have a term that we use now called shut down. That kid shut down. You're not going to be able to get through to him. He's closed everybody off. What I hope for is that this comes around full circle and we find balance between how do you keep a kid safe and not expose them to too much of this bullying, but yet teach him to be able to handle pressure, handle intimidation, handle the challenges that, you know, if someone comes at you and says, look, I don't like what you're doing. Look, I don't think you're right. You have a way to battle back and say, no, let me tell you why I think I am right. See, right now, if somebody does that, and I know you're the interviewer, but the question would be, how would you handle yourself? And probably the answer might be, I really don't know, Shawn. And that's the answer you get from a lot of the young people, maybe even the cameraman back there. Because it's pretty intimidating when someone comes at you and comes at you and comes at you. So that's kind of my answer on that question.
Same question, but about North Baltimore. What's changed here?
Lost a lot of buildings. Well, we keep knocking buildings down because of neglect. The same thing. I happen to be purchasing a lot of these old buildings that are dilapidated and fixing them up because I don't like to see them come down. So North Baltimore has changed in the sense of, and it goes through evolution. A lot of the property owners back in the 80s were getting old and didn't take care of their properties. A lot of the buildings got knocked down. Roofs leaked, windows fell out, bricks started crumbling, so they had no choice. They were too far gone. I managed to pick up a lot of the buildings that were like that and try to do a 360 on them, you know, rehab them, put new roofs on them, get them up and running again, both upstairs and downstairs. And I'm not done yet. I intend on buying one or two more even. But I really think North Baltimore, then and now, people-wise haven't changed. I think a lot of us are the same. I mean, a lot of the people I met when I first moved to town are still here. You know, Dr. King, the chiropractor, Dan and Grace Duvall, who live on Tar Street, they're still here. Those were the first two people that I was introduced to when I moved to North Baltimore in 1993. And even though I was still an outsider, I kept commuting back and forth to Findlay. They helped me sort of integrate into the town. Later on, I met Bob Hardigan, who has now passed away, but Phyllis Hardigan's still alive. He ran the garage. And I met Bonnie Nags. And Bonnie started, you know, gave me a little bit of insight back in the day as to what North Baltimore was about. And she was a real cheerleader. You know, a lot of people, you know, have different opinions, but she was a real cheerleader for the community. So I got to give her credit for that. And it helped me learn how to, you know, get along with people. And from then, I started meeting more and more people. I opened a computer repair shop in the late 90s. And then I met yet more people. Joined the Holy Family Church, which was later Miraculous Metal back then, and left St. Michael's and met even more people. And so the change might be more internal than external, but the more people you meet, the more things that you realize about the community, about what it was and what it is. I do tend to see a lot of the businesses, like when I came to town, we had 6 or 7 bars, as many bars as we have churches. So basically people would go drink on Saturdays and get drunk, and then go to church on Sundays and repent, which is like, oh. Well, nowadays most of those bars are gone. Yeah, that's what I've noticed as far as changes.
What do you think North Baltimore will be like in the future, say 10 or 20 years?
I think if enough people take interest in our infrastructure, meaning our roads, our sidewalks, our greenscapes, even our downtown business districts, I think we can hold it together. I know a lot of the big box stores in bigger cities draw people out of the towns, but yet people seem to like the towns for its sleepy quality, meaning not too much happens in a small town. Kids feel safe riding their bicycles and not getting, you know, into too much mischief. Yes, we have mischief, but I think the future might be, I guess it's a hard answer, because you want the future to be bright, You want the future to, if I have my way, especially in the world of scouting, teach you guys to be leaders, teach you guys to be free thinkers, teach you guys to be independent and strong. And what you learn in your educational career, keep it home and carry on the torch that, you know, the people before you have had. A lot of kids want to go to school and then go to the bigger cities, especially if they're younger. They feel like there's more excitement, more energy, stuff like that, and maybe that caters to your young mind. But as you get older, in your 40s, in your 50s, in your 60s, you kind of like that sleepy town quality. And I think that's what North Baltimore pretty much has and will continue to have, a place for people, almost like a suburb. You know, and as Findlay grows, as Bowling Green grows, maybe even Fostoria if it grows, we'll get kind of encapsulated amongst those guys, kind of like Toledo. You know, you've got Rossford and Maumee and Perrysburg and all those guys around, and it's kind of all blown together. Sooner or later, we're going to see that, where the towns are going to start touching borders, and we might be a suburb of Findlay.
Okay. I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the world will be like in 20 years?
I think our scared young people are going to be faced with having to deal with real hard issues about what we're doing to our government, what we're doing in our United States, how we get along with the rest of the world. And we may or may not be picking up the pieces of what our leaders are doing today. So let's just be realistic right now. I personally voted for Donald Trump, and he is the President of the United States here in 2018, for fun, somebody who sees this in 20 years. But he's really shaking things up. And whether he sets the tone for the future, as far as don't mess with the United States, or he sets the tone in people challenging the United States, you know, what things to come, you could kind of be a little scared about it, but at the same time somewhat optimistic, because, you know, if he says, hey, we need to stand our ground and be a superpower because that's who we are, okay. But also to do it with tact and to do it with respect for other people, you know, being able to reason and rationalize with their views too, but you have to find some common ground. I think if we do that, I think our future could be bright. And I do see a lot of shining stars amongst the young people. So it isn't like I'm saying everybody is scared and everybody's afraid. I see a lot of people that can take charge. You know, the farm communities will struggle, but I see families in town that have young people, especially in our troop, that are farmers, that may pass the torch. People in our troop that people were city council people can pass the torch. As long as we have a sense of who we are now and what we teach our children based on our own values, you know, they might be able to continue that tradition and keep things alive, not just home, not just in our state, but internationally and worldwide.
So what are your personal hopes for the future?
In a sense of me personally, how I feel about myself, or for the general future of mankind?
Like your plans.
My plans? I'm
Yeah.
not going anywhere. There was a television newsreel about a scoutmaster who was in his 90s. Still scoutmaster. He can't go camping anymore because his back hurts, and he can't go hiking anymore because his legs hurt. But by golly, he runs that troop with an iron fist. Everybody loves him. I'm not an iron fist guy, you know that.
Mm.
But I do want to be that person, kind of like a school teacher, who can look back and say, hey, he was my scout in the 90s, or he was my scout in 2000. He was my scout in 2020, in 2030. And then maybe when you have kids, your kids have kids, I'm still there. That's where I see myself. I see myself more in a giving manner. Maybe a little sideline on that is, you know that I've adopted children in my time. So there's a sense of calling, vocation, that had me in a direction that I felt worked for me. And that direction involved young people. You know, I've taught martial arts for many years. I helped our church out in the lines of, with our servers and such. You know, of course, we're helping with the scouts. And, you know, of course, I like playing drums and stuff, so maybe there's a little bit of a kid in me. But then again, you know, to wear this uniform and help you guys out, there has to be a kid in me, otherwise I wouldn't be able to relate. So yeah, that's my future. And just continue down to, to be successful so that I can do that. You can't do that kind of stuff if you can't be successful in your own personal life.
Is there anything else you'd want to say?
I don't know. Just proud of who I am. I don't try to brag. I take it with a sense of humbleness. But I do like to, let people know that, to be strong is to be soft. So like, for example, to see you guys succeed and you've seen more than one Eagle ceremony, you know good and well that when that kid gets pinned or when this Scoutmaster says a speech, it doesn't always end with a dry tear, a dry eye, does it? So, other than that, I think that speaks in 1,000 words.